you have permission to say the phrase, I don't know. It's okay to not have all the information as a leader. But then by being transparent, then you get the question and you know what answers you need to get for your teams, what questions they're going to have.
Welcome to the official CultureCon podcast, where we explore how work actually works.
We're your hosts, Zach Blumenfeld
and Nick Lombardino.
Whether you're leading a team, shaping culture, or just passionate about making work more meaningful, you're in the right place.
Each episode will bring you stories, insights, and bold ideas from people who are building better workplaces and better work experiences.
The official CultureCon podcast starts now. Hello, Culture Geeks. Welcome back to the CultureCon podcast. Today, we're excited to welcome our longtime friend, co-creator, former coworker, and lifelong culture geek, Rachel Breitbach, to the show. Rachel is a senior advisor and practice lead at Farwell, where she helps organizations navigate complex change with clarity, strategy, and heart. She's someone who lives at the intersection of project management, change leadership, and human-centered transformation. She's also a frequent speaker and thought leader in communities like PMI, ACMP, SHRM, and Women in Technology, and she leads a national group of change navigators focused on sharing real-world lessons from people actually doing the work of change. One of the last things we love about Rachel is her fearless approach to growth. She's willing to step outside her comfort zone and encourage others to do the same. Rachel, we're so glad to have you on the show. Welcome to the CultureCon podcast.
Thank you. I know. Applause. Thanks, Nick and Zach. I'm very honored to be here and excited to have this chat with you guys today.
I have to let everybody know right out the gate that you and I were longtime coworkers with one another. And I have you to thank largely for getting me exposed to like community building, I think first and foremost, because you remember, Rachel, like some of our earliest collaborations were having you participate in like our PMO leadership community group that were building at Farwell. And then over time, it grew into the Change Geeks community. That was a precursor to Change Navigators that you lead now, right? And so like I always felt like my exposure to the ecosystem of workplace culture was largely because of you and the delivery that you were doing from a change leadership and change strategy standpoint. There was always like this really powerful organizational undercurrent that supported your delivery and your thoughtful questions and how you built solutions for companies. So that was like a huge genesis for Zach and I even meeting for the first time, because this was around the same period where we were starting to build Change Geeks, and I was getting that was super fun with kind of having that peer-to-peer group. So I just wanted to say thank you, because like look at us now. It's wild.
I know, it is wild.
Yeah.
And right back at you for both of you, where I really feel like I'm at this company. I'm at Farwell. You were one of the OGs, Nick, and you helped build the culture there that attracted me and has kept me there, that is, still thriving. And so I really appreciate that about you. And then you guys building CultureCon, which is just tremendous. I'm so proud.
Well, thank you. Yeah, and a
Thank
huge
you.
testament to Farwell for being, one of the foundational partners since day one, and just giving me permission to go out and kind of incubate this passion project with Zach for so many years really meant a lot. And it actually is kind of like this fun, I don't want to call it a case study, but just kind of like for organizations to see what could happen if you give teammates the time and permission to incubate something that has both personal interest to the employee for what they're passionate about, but also has some level of, economic gain that it makes sense for the company to be involved too. I was just deeply grateful that Farwell allowed me to do that. So thank you for those kind words, Rachel. Those mean a lot. And I don't know, it's just speaking about pastimes and careers. I think you have one of the most interesting backgrounds of anybody that I've met. It's like you've been in sports broadcasting, which is a story that we all absolutely need to hear. and now you're advising and leading companies through transformational organizational change. So first, I guess my question is, can you please tell us the Denver Broncos story? And then after that, what's like a moment in your career journey that's just like really shaped how you approach change leadership?
Yeah, great. Thanks for that, Nick. Absolutely, I will share the Denver Broncos story. So I early in my career wanted to be a sports broadcaster. I grew up being surrounded by it. My mom actually went to college with the wife of the Green Bay Packers sports broadcaster, Zach. I know you're a Green Bay Packers fan. Anyway, and so whenever he came to town, he would invite me to games. I was a young kid and I just loved it. I thought I want to do that. And there weren't very many women in the field at the time. So I also like the challenge of that. Hey, I want to be one of the first, that kind of thing. So I studied it in college and interned with the radio station in Denver. Went to a preseason Broncos game, and at the end of the game, they sent me down to go to the locker room to interview, the players after the game. And I think actually we had lost, but who cares in preseason? Anyway, but I was one of the first women ever to go into their locker room, and it was crazy town. It was new for everybody. All the players addressed it differently, I will say. Some threw things over my head, I think, to try and get a reaction out of me. There was one player, Carl Mecklenburg at the time, who didn't change while I was in there, and I totally respect that, right? Makes sense. And I now have a signed football from him. Talk about culture, and somebody in Farwell had heard my story, had a connection to him, and at a white elephant got him to sign a ball for me. Is that the
That's
most incredible
amazing.
thing? Yes, I can. Yeah,
Whoa.
yeah. Anyway, so now it's one of my most prized possessions. Anyway, so started my career there, or at least at this little radio station interning. And then it was just tough to break in, and I wasn't willing to go to the middle of a small town in the middle of nowhere to start, because I was living in Chicago at the time. And I thought, okay, I'll do that in a couple of years. And then I just never did. I pursued a different career, which is where I am now. So anyway, so that's my sports broadcasting really long story moment. But before I jump into the moment that's shaped how I approach leading through uncertainty, I do want to talk a little bit about what I learned from sports broadcasting, where during my time, I realized, when you're covering a live game, anything can happen. The play shifts, the energy changes, momentum, the story evolves really in real time. And so I learned very quickly that even when you prepare extensively, you can't script everything. You have to go with the moment. And so I think that has translated into how I lead through an uncertainty now. And so the one moment that really sticks with me that I'll share with you more from the change advising aspect is I was working with an organization. They were implementing a large system globally. They had been working on it for a year, and I was there to help with the change management aspects of it. And we were right before go live. So it was the weekend before, where you do a lot of the cutover activities. And it's a very intense weekend, all hands on deck. And we were in the middle, and all of a sudden, something unexpected happened with the system, and it was not performing as we would want. And it was a big deal. And we had to get everybody together to say, what do we do? Do we roll back and not go live on Monday, which had a lot of negative consequences? Would have been a lot of work on my end to try and make sure everybody knew and was communicated with. But the team was very stressed in that moment. You could just feel it. And I thought, for somebody who has a lot of energy and is more reactionary than others, that I think I need to be calm in this moment and help provide just some clear direction, questions, ask about them, the people who are trying to fix the problem. They hadn't slept, they hadn't eaten. And so first said, I think you need to take a break, and I think you need to go eat something, and then let's get back together and decide what it is we were going to do. And so they did that. And the other thing is I had the other leaders and we got together while they were taking a break and said they need to know that we have their back, that if they can't get this fixed, it's going to be okay for us to roll back and not to go live. And so we shared that with them. And then within an hour, they actually figured it out and fixed the problem after we got back together. And so then we could still go live. But I think it was a good experience that taught me, you don't have to have all the answers. Sometimes when you're dealing with uncertainty, they just need you to be calm, provide some direction, and create that safe space where they can think clearly and they can act confidently, to get you to the other side. So anyway, that mindset stayed with me from when I did broadcasting to, consulting with teams leading big, messy changes now.
And I can vouch for that firsthand witness here. Like I've been a part of, granted, these were probably small potatoes change initiatives when we worked together, Rachel, but there were certainly ones that probably carried their own level of risk or stress among team members. And you always showing up as that calm, pragmatic voice. I know that always fueled, like that was contagious for me as somebody who probably defaults to maybe slightly more anxious in those sorts of situations. I felt like I had so much more calm and confidence by seeing you and other leaders exhibit those behaviors. So I just wanted to underscore that and ask you, has that always been like a core part of your personality to be able to show up in those moments in that way, or these were like learned behaviors over time?
Definitely learned behaviors, Nick. People joke with me that I have resting confused face that I've had to work on, where I'm thinking, but it's like I'm confused. And so, I've had to work on that and not appear that I'm overreacting to something that's being presented to me. I'm still working on that, right? These are still opportunities for me, and I'm excitable. And so to stay calm, similar to you, I have a lot of energy, but sometimes that doesn't always show up in the right ways. And so through other colleagues and people that you and I have been exposed to have practiced some mindfulness practices to help me, when appropriate, be able to stay calm and help be that calming force when it's needed. So yeah, I wish it was all natural. I'm jealous of people who have that natural state, but something that I'm definitely, it's a practice. You have to keep on working on it, and I'm not always great at it, but definitely try.
Well, Nick and I are confused most of the time.
Yeah, I was gonna say when we can have resting.
This is my rest.
Space
That's my
together.
resting.
It's a normal look for Nick and I.
I love it.
But yeah, I mean, it's true. I think, a lot of people think change and they get scared. There's a lot of anxiety around change. And so to have someone like yourself that has that kind of calm and collected mindset, I think it eases a lot of other people that are going through that change process. And I know we know you as someone who applies pretty much a fearless approach to the new challenges and gets outside of your comfort zone. But when you go through a change project, what does that mentality actually look like in the context of organizational change? And is there a way to transfer that fearlessness to the other people going through the process in a way that's not so scary as it sounds?
I definitely try and take that fearless approach, not because I'm never scared, but I try not to let that discomfort stop me or stop the teams that I'm supporting through the change. My favorite quote is from the hockey great Wayne Gretzky. You miss 100% of the shots you don't take. And I think in organizational change, that mindset shows up as curiosity over control and taking action and being willing to fail over being afraid to even try. So I've tried to have that growth mindset and lean in towards, asking those questions and learning for the rest of the team. So how else I think fearlessness can look like as leaders to help translate it for the teams is first being able to challenge the status quo, even when challenging it may not be popular or the mentality is, I hear this phrase a lot when working with organizations and teams with change. We've always done it this way. Why would we change it? And I coach leaders to listen for phrases like that when they're saying it, and then help set expectations that just because we've always done something one way doesn't mean that it can't or shouldn't be changed, especially in the world we live in right now, where so much is changing around us. We really need to be more open to it and kind of build that muscle. So that's one. Another is being fearless to me is being authentic and vulnerable as a leader, including admitting when something isn't working and you yourself have made a mistake. I've had plenty of opportunities to practice this as a leader, made many of mistakes. I'll give an example where I was moving a team from the US to the Philippines, and I was responsible for this move, and it was not going well. The service levels, instead of getting better, were getting worse throughout the move. And I was trying a few things. And I think because I felt such a sense of ownership, I was trying to do it all on my own and wasn't really asking for help. And finally, I came to the realization that I can't do this alone. I need others' help. And I also have to admit that what I've tried and the experience that I brought to the table isn't working in this instance. And so I still remember to this day, I went and sat in the middle of the team. They had a working area on the floor. And I said, this isn't working. I know I'm not doing this well. I need your help. Are you willing to give me ideas? And they gave me a bunch. We tried a few, some didn't work, but actually a couple were our game changers and changed the tide. And then from then on, it was successful. So that really helped me realize that if you model the way, then others, will follow and will be willing to do that and be fearless. And then finally, I think fearlessness is experimenting and learning and being willing to adjust and not be too proud of any one direction kind of thing.
We want to give a quick thank you to our friends at Culture Shape. They're really helping people and culture leaders design and deliver higher impact programs through a single source.
Yeah, and one of the things I love is their culture wheel. It's a 12-month visual calendar that makes it easier to plan, organize, and communicate culture programs across the whole organization. It's a simple way to get stronger buy-in and support.
And right now we got a really cool promotion for our CultureCon podcast listeners. You can get 50% off a one-on-one 4-week online consulting program with Pete Savage, Culture Shape CEO. These spots are limited, so if you're interested, head to cultureshape.co/CultureCon to grab your place. And you've been so close to helping organizations navigate change for so long, not only in a change strategy role, but also project management, leadership development, and coaching. I'd be interested to know, what's one kind of main difference that you see among how organizations tried to navigate change, let's say 15 to 20 years ago, and what's changed now for what they need to think about that's perhaps different than what it was not that long ago?
Well, I think 15 to 20 years ago, change management and thinking about the people side of change was around, but I think people felt like it was a softer science. They didn't really buy in to it. They cognitively knew maybe we should do it, but they didn't really focus on the people side of change. I do think there's been a lot more research that has happened in the last 15 to 20 years, both on the science side of how we're naturally wired to resist change, and you really have to be intentional to help people respond to their own natural, what's going on in their bodies, as well as business research and outcomes, tying, if you focus on the people aspect, you actually are going to get those business outcomes that you're looking for. And then obviously just the pace, complexity, stacking of change continues. And I think leaders in organizations are realizing now that this can be a competitive advantage if you focus more on the people side, but it needs to be embedded. And a good place to start is with your leaders, which is, I think both of you know, I have a particular passion for change leadership. I appreciate organizational change management and the process, but sometimes you have planned and unplanned changes, so you don't have enough time to go through a more formal process. You got to react in the moment. And if leaders are better leaders of change, they build that trust with their teams, and their teams will follow them anywhere through anything. They'll trust that even if you're not checking a box or, doing those things, that you'll do the right thing for the team.
Right. Yeah, the trust is paramount. So thinking about change leadership specifically, Rachel, what's maybe one thing from your vantage point that you think some organizations get wrong from a change leadership standpoint? Maybe it's a misconception, maybe it's something that is maybe perceived as too tactical and not strategic. What's just one kind of observation of from a change leadership standpoint that organizations kind of stumble through?
There are many things. So there's not, the one main thing is that they don't focus on it enough and make it an expectation or a core competency, or what are we doing to focus and help our leaders be better leaders of change specifically. We have a model at Farwell that we've built and developed that I think help leaders keep this top of mind in their roles and how they can better support their teams. And so we call it the TIE model. And TIE, we love our acronyms, as you know. And so TIE stands for transparency, inclusion, and empathy. And I'll give examples, I think, about each one of these where we coach leaders and maybe where they can help with some of the fundamentals of change or help their teams. So transparency is one where I think leaders are nervous about sharing change with their teams because they think, especially if it's negative in some way or perceive that it's going to be negative, they don't want to share it because they don't want their teams to react to the change. And in my experience, the more transparent you are, the more trust you build with your teams. And even if it's bad news, you'll have a better outcome and there's more adoption and you build that trust. So an example I'll give was working with an organization going through a merger and acquisition. There were redundant roles as they were integrating the two teams. So they knew there was going to be job loss at the end of the integration. Was working with 4 leaders. 3 of those didn't want to share that outcome with their teams. 1 was willing to, and her team was the only team that didn't lose anybody through the transition. And I think because she shared with them early on, she didn't know how many roles, what roles, when they would be lost, but she shared that could be a possible outcome. And when I have more information, I'll share it with you. She built that trust so that they shared back with her. They shared, well, I have this job interview. I may get an offer, but if you're going to have more information next week, then maybe I can negotiate and not move and, so I can make a decision, if that makes sense. So that's one aspect. And I think leaders sometimes don't want to be transparent because they don't have all the information either. They can't answer all the questions that are bound to come to them. And I also want to tell them, you have permission to say the phrase, I don't know. It's okay to not have all the information as a leader. But then by being transparent, then you get the question and you know what answers you need to get for your teams, what questions they're going to have, if that makes sense. So it just starts that dialogue. So that's the T. The I, which is inclusion, I have a colleague, and I quote him, I tell him all the time, David, where he says, it's hard for people to resist their own ideas. And I love that with change. The more that you can include people that are going through the change, the more they're going to adopt it because they've had some ownership, sense of license over their own destiny. Not that you should include them in all decisions. That's not realistic. I understand and appreciate that. like give them guidelines or guideposts in terms of what they can make decisions about or not. And then the last one, empathy. Sometimes people just want to be heard and know that you care about them. And empathy too plays into sometimes you don't have visibility into everything going on in people's lives. You know about the change that maybe you're initiating that they have to respond to, but there may be other things that are causing them to react in a certain way to this change. But in essence, it may not have anything to do with the change, right? They may have spilled coffee on their outfit on the way to work and are feeling, just reacting in different ways. There are so many ways that people could respond. So having that empathy really helps. The other thing I like about the tie model is that these three tie together. The more transparent you are, the more included your team will be in the process and more willing to give you that feedback. And the more transparent you are, then it provides that opportunity to be empathetic because you know and understand where they are and how they're responding to the change. So anyway, I encourage organizations, if you're embarking, upon these big changes, think about your leaders and give them things that they can leverage to lead their teams, throughout the change, not just at one particular moment.
Yeah, I love that acronym. And I feel like, no pun intended, but it also ties nicely into just life in general. Like that acronym and those kind of key foundational pillars are things that I like to think are part of my life and help make life better for folks. So, and kind of also ties into community and ecosystems, which I know you're a part of a lot of different communities and ecosystems, like change navigators and PMI. And we kind of talked about it in your intro. And I'm curious from those communities and kind of thinking about like CultureCon and what Nick and I have been building, like I learned so much from this community, like more than I've learned at other jobs or in school. And I'm curious from the communities that you've helped build and that you support, how has that influenced your learning and kind of how you think about leadership and culture?
I've learned so much over the years being part of these communities. I'm very grateful for them, from starting one, as Nick mentioned earlier, when we started Change Geeks, now Change Navigators, to being able to link into something that already exists. What I really appreciate is when you have some connection that you start from with them, you can really build on that and build that trust very quickly. It's amazing to me how quickly you can build the trust and you create this energy. You all feel it. I felt it at every CultureCon. It's this organic, palpable, in the room, just because everybody has that connection point, but they all want to learn and grow together. And so it's how can we share the wealth of what I've gained in my life experience, both professionally and personally, but also what can I learn from you? Everybody has value in their own journeys. And it's so fun and so interesting to hear all about it. And then when you start that sharing over time, you continue that trust and then you start to challenge one another in different ways. It goes from sharing to building a community of people who help not just to learn together, but to have those uncomfortable conversations or hold up a mirror maybe when you're not seeing something. So I really rely on those communities to help with that growth mindset that I mentioned earlier, to be that safe space for me to share with them, but also for them to share back with me and say, oh my goodness, I didn't realize that. Thank you so much for sharing that.
You just made me realize like these let's call them community groups, for like a generic term. Like one of the most powerful endpoints you can get to with those groups is shared accountability. And I'd never thought about this before until you just brought it up, Rachel. So it's like if you're a part of a group, a community, an ecosystem where you get to the point where there's enough trust, where you have shared accountability with one another, and that means you're pushing them towards greatness and they're doing the same for you. Like that's top of the mountain. Like that's incredible.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's so great to see the evolution the more time you spend in the communities. I'm even amazed. You build relationship with some people that you meet through these networks and continue on with. But I'm even amazed sometimes you go to these communities and they're different people each time, but how quickly you get to that space of trust and trying to build that psychological safety because you're all there because you want to learn and grow. And so the quicker you can get to that point, you figure it out, you try and navigate, okay, who is it that I can trust? What am I doing to create that space? The better use of your time, because you only have limited time too in these groups. So try and translate that in terms of culture within our own organizations or also personally, how can we bring that back to make sure that we create it in other environments as well? Or where can you find that connection? It's easy in these groups because they're named something. Okay, women in technology. We want to help other women who live in that world. But sometimes you don't know what that connection is yet. And so it gives you an opportunity. Let's find it, and then let's maybe build and grow together based on it once we learn it.
So good, Rachel. I have one final question for you as we wrap things up here. And it has to do just with kind of like your proximity right now to being, really in the weeds with a lot of organizational leaders that are going through transformational change. And I'm trying not to make this sound like overly soundbitey, but I would be really interested to hear, like, when you think of the years ahead, what's one bold prediction or just like a hot take that you have with respect to change leadership, change strategy that we can start building conversations around?
I think I don't know how bold it is, but a bold prediction is with the ever increasing incorporation of technology in our lives, there will never be a more important time to create that human connection. So it becomes more and more about humanity and understanding what makes us different as humans. And I think some of that time model does, especially the empathy part. I think empathy is really, it's hard for my AI buddy to be empathetic when I'm talking to him or her. And I sometimes get frustrated because it's not there, if that makes sense, when you get the responses back. But I think the more that we incorporate it, the more it will be important for us to build on that or figure out how do we double down on that aspect and have conscious collisions, I'll call them, where we make sure that we interact with other humans and that it isn't, as we joked about earlier, where your AI is talking to another AI. And that's how we live and work. So how do we build that? I don't know yet, but it is top of mind.
That's a mic
Conscious
drop.
collisions. Yeah, that's a mic drop right there. We should get on trademarking that phrase. That's beautiful.
Rachel, I think about you often when, remind me what the term is. I want to say it's called like change saturation, but it has something to do when like employees of companies are just getting inundated with like too much stimulus, too much change, too much information. Is that what it's called?
Change saturation, yep, is one term. Change fatigue is another. And I think in the change community too, we're talking about that. Should we still even use that term? Does it make people be able to be victims? Because there is so much change surrounding us. We are going to be saturated, if that makes sense. It's not going away. Anyway, so that's an interesting discussion and debate in terms of, do we still talk about change saturation? Because it makes it seem like, well, I'm done, I'm out. You can't say that you're not going to engage with change. It is the reality of what we're living, if that makes sense.
Oh, it makes perfect sense because, like, to use your term, conscious collisions, like maybe one of the bold predictions in how employees of companies are going to go along with change is more grounded in that, because I can only speak of from my personal experience in these past couple of years where, I don't work for a big company, but holy smokes, am I feeling just like constantly inundated with information, stimulus. And a lot of it is just my own self-inflicted pain. It's almost like this unfortunate rewiring of how I live and work because of these tools that are providing me with a ton of productivity or efficiency. And now I'm feeling like I want to go back to the days where I can just talk to real people in real physical rooms and navigate life more that way. And so I'd have to think that that has some pretty big implications for how companies are going to take employees along through these times of uncertainty and change.
Yeah, that's a really good point, Nick. I think it's both from the organizational lens, but also for the individual lens. How are we going to choose to engage with them about change? When is the right moment or opportunity? But also we as individuals, when is the right moment for us to engage with these things? I actually have a recent example for one of my daughters asked for an iPad for the holidays because she wanted to take her social media off of her phone so that it wasn't constant. She needed her phone all the time so that it wasn't constantly pinging her, so that she could engage with other humans when she was out and about. And then she has a certain time every night and she time boxes it when I engage with that platform, if that makes sense. So she's being more conscious about when she's present with others versus when she engages with technology or, other things, which I thought was extremely mature for a 20 whatever year old. It wasn't her parents saying, oh, you're on your devices too much. It was her realizing that all this change is happening. It's pinging her and it was affecting her. And so what can I do to modify the way that I interact?
That's, very mature. I miss the days when your phone was actually a phone and that's all it did. Like, I feel like the only people I talk to on my phone now are Nick and my grandma Laverne. Like everyone else, I'm texting or DMing and
Sometimes at the same time.
sometimes, yes.
When it actually rings or calls. Yeah, it's so funny.
Well, human connection, I think that's the motto. That's the goal I think companies should be leaning in towards as AI and technology continues to kind of overrun both our work and personal lives. The more human connection, the more conscious collisions we have, the better for society. Well, on that note, Rachel, thank you so much for your time today and joining us and being an OG culture geek from the CultureCon community. It really means a lot and really enjoyed the conversation today.
Yeah, likewise. I always enjoy getting together with the two of you. And one other thing we didn't talk about in this conversation, but something else I admire about you both is your sense of fun that you always bring to everything you do. Life's too short, and we might as well have a little fun while we're engaging in it together. So thank you for that as well.
Thank you, Rachel. We love you. Thank you so much.
Likewise, right
and
back
thanks,
at ya.
everybody. We'll see you next time.
That's a wrap on this episode of the official CultureCon podcast.
If you got something out of it, share it with a friend, a teammate, or a fellow culture geek.
And don't forget to hit subscribe so you never miss an episode.
And if you want more ways to stay connected and inspired, check out our upcoming events page for a full listing of webinars, workshops, and conferences.
You'll find the link in the show notes, and we'd love to welcome you to a CultureCon event soon.
Until next time,